I want to start with a quick overview of how we see this study and our vision for how this fits into the global conversation happening around the Sustainable Development Goals. So in our outreach, when we reached out to all of you initially, we sort of highlighted that we see this as being an important component of SDG 2 on ending hunger and improving nutrition. And the reality is all the SDGs are really interconnected. And just by way of showing what a direct outcome of this study will be is SDG 17 on partnerships for the goals. We're all trying to build partnerships that can advance the topic of nutrition and our goals for nutrition. And what we're hoping to do with this study is to create a collaborative space where everyone can share their ideas and we can build partnerships and come up with ideas together that can advance our goals for SDG 2. And so with that sort of as the overarching vision, I want to hand it off to our colleagues at GAIN. So Charlotte, it's all you. Please take it away.
Yeah, hello, hi everybody. I am Charlotte from GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. I'm working out of our Copenhagen office, where I'm responsible for our programming out of the Nordics. And I'm also the one from GAIN leading this initiative around innovation. GAIN is an international NGO, for those of you who do not know us yet. And we are driven by the mission without any malnutrition in the world, so that all people can have access to nutritious and safe and affordable food. And we focus on the most vulnerable populations. I would like to introduce Project Disrupt, as we call it. With this project, which I'm so excited about that you all have joined, and will help us out in trying to surfacing innovation that can have really a more transformative impact on the food system, delivering more affordable and nutritious and safe food, and making sure that we really focus on the more scalable solutions so we can make a greater impact for nutrition. We know that we stand in front of what somebody knows, some people knows as the fourth industrial revolution, and we really hope that we can pick your brains to really identify the ones that would have the most impact on nutrition. With me in the team, I work with Orion, who will introduce himself as a supply chain associate for GAIN, working out of our US office. So Orion, if you will introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Orion. I'm the supply chain associate. I've been doing some of the field work for Project Disrupt. Actually, some of you on this call, I was able to meet you when I went to Kenya, India, and Nigeria. And so it's a pleasure to have you be a part of this and kind of continue some of the research and work that we've done on that. But I think besides kind of diving into that, Chase has some slides that we'll talk about where it's all going. I think it would be nice to do an icebreaker. With this many people on the call, we can't all go around and introduce ourselves. There is the bio PDF that's been shared throughout the email. And I know at the end of this end of this series of surveys, we'll have another sort of wrap-up workshop where people can really use that as an opportunity to network. I think just kind of quick ways that we can get to know each other and also test out some of the awesome tools on Zoom. We wanted to do 2 polls. Is that right, Chase?
That is correct.
Awesome. So I think one of the first polls that we can start off here, is what is your favorite nutritious food and what is your favorite malnutritious food? Feel free to click on one of these boxes and then we'll be able to get the results on that. And there'll be a couple different other polls after this that we can all use to get to briefly see who's kind of in the room and what are some of our thoughts.
Wow. Okay. All right, then that is it. Bye-bye.
All right, how are we doing with responses?
We have some responses still coming in, but I think maybe we can hand it off to Angela now, who can introduce us while people continue to vote.
Or there we go.
Or there we go. So it seems like fruit came through as well as chocolate. Those are the clear winners: fruit and meat and chocolate and fried food. So that's good to know.
I think we can combine the fruit and the chocolate. I think
Yeah,
chocolate
actually,
dipped strawberries are coming to mind. I think there's lots of options here.
Making chocolate nutritious.
Perfect. I'm Angela Hansen speaking. It's really a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at the Global Knowledge Initiative. You've heard Chase, and you'll hear Gunimrath in just a second. GKI, the Global Knowledge Initiative, is a not-for-profit organization based in Washington, D.C., and I just wanted to take a couple of seconds to introduce our institution. We work with individuals, organizations, and networks to tackle complex social and economic challenges. And we do this through an approach that we call, quite broadly, collaborative innovation. We use systems thinking, we use human-centered design, and we use innovation mindsets to create an environment that allows innovation to flourish. And so we're going to be bringing to bear a number of different approaches and tools throughout the work that we do with GAIN. We'll focus today on the application of the Delphi method, and Chase will talk you through that. But I just wanted to give you a bit of context for GKI, really working with all types of problem solvers from idea to impact all around the world. So we're really pleased to be here today and to have the chance to collaborate with you.
Thanks for that, Angela. And so obviously it makes sense to talk about what we're collaborating for next. So as I've shared with all of you in the various materials that Gunimrath and I have sent via email, the goal of this study is to identify the top innovations that can help us transform the availability, the safety, and the shelf life of nutritious foods in emerging markets over the next 5 years. And so with this as the goal, it begs the question, what is innovation? And GKI defines innovation as a technology, a business model, a process, or a policy that is either new in that it hasn't been tried before, or is being applied in a new context, be that a new sector or a new geography. So that's the framing we're going to use for innovation throughout this study, but with a focus on technologies, on business models, and on process innovations. And so now, we're going to talk about how we're going to do that. But before we do, I want to pass it to Gunimrath, who will talk us through who you're going to be doing that with.
Hi, everyone. There are 39 of you spread across the world who are bringing expertise and knowledge to our study. So we want to take a moment to thank all of you and feedback some information that we have on you. So in this process, we hoped to get as diverse a panel as possible from a multitude of sectors and representations so that we can really bring the best knowledge available to our study. We've achieved almost a 50-50 gender ratio, and within sectors, we have a substantial representation from the private sector, which includes people in agribusiness, investors, as well as people who are innovators or entrepreneurs. We also have a significant number of people in the field of development, which includes multilaterals, practitioners, and researchers within development. And we also have academic researchers represented. And third, some of you have shared your geographic specialization with us. You'll notice that these numbers don't necessarily add up to 39. And that is because many of you have specialization in more than one of these regions. In addition, some of you have more of a global reach. And we can see that looking at this pie chart, we have our most significant representation in South and Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, which is where Orion, as mentioned, was conducting his supply chain analyses. And those are the emerging economies that the innovations we are looking at in our study will be targeted. And I'd like to now throw a poll question to you so that you can define how your expertise you feel can most contribute to our study. So I've launched a poll question here. How would you describe your primary area of expertise? And note here that you can choose more than one. All right, we've got responses coming in. I'm going to wait for at least half of you to respond. All right, so as you can see, and as our team much anticipated, most of you have expertise in food systems, which of course does involve some of the other expertise areas that we have listed here. Looking at the widespread of representation that we have, we hope that you all are excited to work with people who have similar goals but different expertise, as excited as we are. And with that, I'll hand it back to Chase.
All right, thank you, Gernimrit. So we have this great panel, a great diverse panel with a variety of expertise, both geographically and sectorally. And so now we want to talk about what we're expecting to produce via this study and how we're going to do it. And so we're anticipating that this study will ideally contribute to the global knowledge base of innovation for nutrition, with a specific focus on identifying the top innovations that can be applied in emerging markets, and also developing a frame of reference for conceptualizing how we think about and how we talk about innovation in nutrition, because we know that another wave of innovation is coming, and if we don't define what that wave should be and what we'd like it to be, then it may end up that nutrition is not prioritized within this global push that's happening around the SDGs. And we've seen that in the past with the focus on staple crops over many years, and what we're really trying to do is figure out how we can highlight nutrition within the innovation landscape. And we're going to do that using the Delphi technique. And so I'm going to walk through this. Gernimrit, I'd like to ask you to pull up the poll on to see who's been in a Delphi technique or participated in a Delphi study before. But the way the Delphi works is it starts with a facilitator, in this case, the Global Knowledge Initiative, and they put together an initial list of inputs. In our case, this will be innovations. And they provide these inputs to a panel of experts. And so this expert panel evaluates these inputs for at least 2 rounds. In our case, we will have 3 rounds, and we'll ask you to evaluate these inputs through a combination of open-ended and multiple choice questions. We will then compile this data, we'll analyze it, and we'll repackage it in a digestible format. And then we will provide this back to you. And so in round 2, we'll go through this in a little more detail in a minute, but in round 2, you'll basically be responding to your own opinions. And we'll do this for 3 full rounds to complete the Delphi. And based on all of the data collected through 3 rounds, we'll then produce a report. What we anticipate will be a high impact report that, as we said, will help shape the conversation happening around innovation and nutrition. And on that point, if you have any ideas for places that we can try to promote this report, or different avenues that we can use to get more impact out of the report, we would love to hear those. And so if you want to put those in the chat box or email us later, that would be great. And so as this process sort of outlines, the Delphi process is really driven by the perspective of the panelists. And so in this vein, we'd like to ask you to respond to our questionnaires with a combination of qualities. And these qualities are really, we put these on here in hopes that you will, that'll help us get the best data possible through this process. So 1 is candor. So we would appreciate your honesty and your openness throughout the process. If you think an innovation is terrible, tell us that. If you think it is the greatest thing you've ever seen, tell us that too. What we really want is your honest opinions on everything that we're discussing. And so the next quality is ambition. And we're thinking about the future. We're thinking about how we can transform nutrition outcomes over the next 5 years. And so what we'd like is for everyone to think big and to think optimistically about what these innovations might be able to accomplish. We'd also like to ask you to respond with clarity. So as I said, we'll be asking some open-ended questions. And so if you take a little extra time to make sure your thoughts are written clearly, we can ensure that, sorry, somebody. So if you take a little extra time to make sure your thoughts are written clearly, that will help to eliminate any bias from our interpretation. And sorry, whoever is speaking, can you please mute yourself? All right. So clarity will help us to eliminate any bias from the process in our analysis of the data, so we don't have to interpret anything. It will all be your thoughts that are shining through in our analysis. And then finally, because we will be doing some analysis and we'll be evaluating innovations, we'd like to ask you to apply analytic rigor in how you think about these innovations and making sure that you're thinking about these critically and in a way that is aligned with the goals of the study. So we have 3 rounds that I'm going to go through very quickly. So round 1, as I said, we'll be providing an initial list of innovations. We'll be asking you to rate all of these innovations and selecting your top 10 that you think are the best innovations. And then we'll also be asking you to recommend any that we've missed. We are hoping to have about 100 to provide to you, but there's a chance, it's probably pretty likely that we will miss some innovations. So we'll ask you to recommend any additional innovations, as well as criteria that you think are important for evaluating the potential of an innovation. We will sort the innovations and categorize the criteria coming out of round 1, and we'll put that to you. And so in round 2, you'll be responding to how you and your colleagues in the study have rated these innovations collectively. And so you'll be responding to the sorting, agreeing and disagreeing with where the group ranks these innovations. And then we'll also be evaluating the evaluation criteria provided in round 1 to select those that the group thinks are the best criteria for evaluating an innovation. So coming out of round 2 and into round 3, we'll have the top innovations for nutrition, as well as a series of criteria that can be used to evaluate these innovations. And then in round 3, we'll really be trying to dive deeper into these innovations, and so we can really think about what the impact potential of these innovations might be. And as we said, this will be used to produce the final report. So looking at the time, we can throw up a quick poll and skip the introduction to SurveyMonkey. If people are unfamiliar, we can develop some more outreach materials on this. But if you respond to this poll, this will give us a sense of how necessary this is. And so finally, I want to share the timeline and the key dates. So as you all know, we'll be starting on round 1. We'll be starting round 1 on December 7th. Each survey will be open for 10 days time, so you have 10 days to respond to it. And at the end of the 10 days, we'll close the survey, and then between rounds, Gurnimarth and I and Angela will be doing our analysis and compiling the data. So round 2 will begin on January 11th, round 3 on February 15th. If any of these dates stand out as being an issue at this point, please let us know and we can try to get out in front of us. So it looks like more than 80% of you are familiar with SurveyMonkey. So I'm glad we skipped that part. If you are unfamiliar, please send us a note and we can put together a sample survey so you can familiarize yourself prior to round 1. So as we're doing this webinar right now, we're also planning a webinar at the close of the process in late February or early March. And this will be more of a discussive, of course, webinar and a chance for you all to share your ideas about these innovations and share your thoughts on how the process went. And then we'll be planning to produce the final report and be promoting that in April 2019. So as I said, if you have any ideas for ways that we can get the most impact out of this report as possible, we would appreciate if you would share those with us. And so that wraps up our presentation. We hope we have some time for questions. Looks like we have about 5 minutes. So if you have any questions for us, if anything was unclear, this would be the time to ask them. You can ask us via the chat box,